Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Beyond the Buzzword. Just very quickly, thanks for joining promptly on time. I think we're just going to wait a kind of another minute or so just to see, because we're just seeing the numbers sort of creeping up at the moment. So we'll just hold on and then we'll commence. So yeah, make yourselves comfortable. Cool. It's still just creeping up a little bit. So let's just hang on a sec and then shall commence. Okay, cool. Looks like we're kind of there. So yeah, once again, hello, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Beyond the Buzzwords. So firstly, a couple of introductions. So my name's Chris May. I'm the sales manager on Milkround. I've been working within early careers now, entering my 12th year, supporting and working with a wide range of customers and early careers employers. If you're not as familiar with Milkround, so for over 20 years now, we've been connecting the top kind of early careers talent with a wide range of recruiters using lots of different methods and doing bits like that. As part of that, what we've been doing is lots of research on how we can support. So obviously having such a large kind of database of candidates means we've got access to lots of information, which we know is really key to kind of defining your future strategies. So that's what we're going to be running through some of today. I'd like to also introduce Charlotte, who's going to be presenting alongside me today. So yeah, over to you.
Hi everybody, I'm Charlotte Renakers. I'm a marketing executive for Milkround. I've been working alongside Chris, my other colleagues, and also my manager Georgie to put this research together. So we're really excited to share it with you today. We also have our student panel joining us at the end. If they could just turn their cameras on and give everybody a little wave. There we go. You should see some of them start coming through. Perfect. So that kind of leads on to some housekeeping rules. So first of all, we have a chat function to the side of your screen you should all see. If you have any questions for myself or Chris, or for any of the student panel that you can see there, please pop your questions into the chat function and we will endeavour to answer all of them. This session is also being recorded and will be sent out to you after the webinar. So if you have any colleagues that you want to share any information with, you can do through that. Also, if you have any technical difficulties, please let us know in the chat as well, and we will do our best to help you. Great, so we say goodbye to our student panel for now. They will be joining us again later, and over to start on our research.
Okay, brilliant. So I guess firstly, what do we mean by Beyond the Buzzword? Well, I guess we all kind of work in an industry where we hear lots of terms all the time, and especially at the moment, kind of diversity, inclusion and equity is one that really jumps out, but also bits like top talent and elitism and bits from here. So what we really wanted to do was get under the skin of that and actually understand what this means to individuals, both graduates and employers, really, and how that kind of goes from there. We know it's been an interesting year. I think everyone can agree in that. But at the same time, I guess there's nothing wrong in trying to see what positives we can take out of this year and how it can help us progress moving forwards on that. So to give you a breakdown of the agenda, we're going to start by breaking down kind of either synergy or discrepancies between opinions on employers and students. The next is focusing a bit more on graduates and what they believe currently employers focus on when they're recruiting. A bit of an idea then from these candidates, the kind of DI&E initiatives that they'd like to see in kind of the process and the attraction, and also the reality of that from what we're hearing from employers. And then in closing on this part of the presentation, some recommendations that we've had from employers that we spent some time with and did some focus group work with to help people that aren't maybe currently doing as much as they would like in that field and how they can help implement that moving forwards. And finally, yeah, as we've said, it was really popular when we ran it in the summer. So we think it's a really good opportunity, not just for us to kind of share that, but to hear it from the horse's mouth, so to speak. So we've got the 4 students that are going to join us at the end. A really nice opportunity as a panel to kind of hear their thoughts, but also ask some questions and do that. So I guess moving on from that, the next is looking at, well, why did we do this research? And I guess from an employer perspective, it's key when we look at the ISE information this year, which was a survey of the top 200 employers and the people that are employed in excess of 46,000 graduates each year. And what we can see here is 62% of the employers surveyed by the ISE said that they do have targets in terms of their attraction and their recruitment, with no surprise there being that sex, gender, race, and socio-economic background being kind of really key in terms of areas that they're targeted on. And again, it's not just about the outcomes, it's also about the selection process and the attraction that takes place, with almost 90% having made changes recently to their selection process from a D-I&E perspective. So again, you can see here anything from just the monitoring of diversities all the way through to kind of company-wide unconscious bias training, and really understanding how important it is that these issues are carried not just through outcomes, but also through that attraction window.
So now looking at why we've looked into this topic from a candidate perspective. So last year we conducted research which found that 4 in 5 graduates believe employers favour students from Russell Group universities. And we wanted to delve even deeper into this to better understand what attributes students and graduates actually want employers to focus on in the application process, and then how employers can make graduate recruitment more inclusive for all. So in September, we surveyed 250 HR decision makers to better understand how their companies are approaching diversity, inclusion and equity within their graduate recruitment. And then following this, in October, we surveyed over 1,000 students and recent graduates to understand what their experience is and also their perceptions of employers and what they want to see when they are applying for jobs. So we're now going to take a look at some of the key findings, which really highlight the discrepancies between what students believe and what HR decision makers have said. So as you can see here, we found that students and HR decision makers don't always see eye to eye when it comes to recruitment procedures. So the biggest discrepancy is where the nepotism affects who is offered the job. So 81% of students and graduates believe it is, compared to just 6% of HR decision makers who say that this is a factor within their recruitment. If we then look broader into diversity, inclusion and equity, just over a third of students and graduates think businesses employ a truly diverse workforce, compared to over half of HR decision makers. And then only 19% of students and graduates think that companies are doing enough to ensure a diverse workforce, compared to almost 60% of HR decision makers who think that they are. So I guess the question is here, what is actually causing this strong difference of opinion? So to answer that, we can first look deeper into the priorities. So what are HR decision makers looking at when they make recruitment decisions, and what do students feel are factors and attributes that are prioritized by employers? So here we can see that students believe employers are favouring those who have prior work experience in the same industry and first-class degrees. So whilst they do believe that prior work experience is something employers should be looking at, they also think that recruiters should be looking more at the skills each candidate has, as opposed to which university they went to. Interestingly, HR decision makers say that they do prioritise skills and work experience in the recruitment process, in addition to those applicants having strong professional references. And further to this, Quarter said that the most successful workers also showed a willingness to learn new skills. So looking at the information given and the discrepancies in what students think employers are doing and what they are actually doing, could this be more of a communication problem and businesses not doing enough to showcase their recruitment processes and what's important to them? It's also really interesting here to think that there's clearly a focus on having that prior work experience in the same industry. However, and especially with the way the world has turned and changed this year, I think it's really important to consider those transferable skills from different types of work experience. And I think this also goes hand in hand with the fact that HR decision makers are looking for that willingness to learn.
Okay, great. So if we've got these discrepancies, maybe it's time to actually delve a bit deeper then into these student and graduate perceptions. So to begin with, one of the questions we asked was around kind of reputation for diversity and inclusion within particular industries and how that compares to popularity. So if we see on the left-hand side, we can see that the top 3 sectors, with healthcare, arts and culture and education leading the way for the industries that candidates want to work in, which I think, considering the year we've had, obviously healthcare and the education sectors have had a whole lot of kind of widespread media attention this year. And also quite nice to see that arts and culture, whilst being a sector that's probably been quite heavily impacted by the events of 2020, still retains kind of a popularity from there. It's also interesting to consider whether this inclusiveness actually equals popularity or whether they're just inherently diverse industries from what we understand. However, when we look at the lower end of the scale, we can see that in terms of that reputation piece, less than 6% of people highlighted the legal profession, finance and manufacturing as having kind of positive reputations. Now, again, I know in my role, I speak to lots and lots of companies and know there's some amazing initiatives taking place and that they are industries that probably historically maybe haven't had as good a reputation for this, but are making great strides. So the question here is it a misconception within students and is it a communication piece, or does it still mean that there's quite a lot for employers in these industries to do to catch up with some of the ones that are actually leading the way? The next question that we moved on to was in terms of elitism. And I know it's something we've asked a number of years in our candidate compass. But again, as much as diversity is a really kind of key issue for a number of people, over half of the people we surveyed had told us that they believe attending a Rust Group university was factored positively into a company's recruitment decision. So worth being aware of that. Slightly more concerning that nearly half actually believed that the candidates from more marginalised backgrounds are likely to not be as treated equally in the workplace when they do get there. So again, from that kind of communication piece, there's a whole lot to do here in terms of changing these perceptions. The next piece that we wanted to ask actually kind of concerns identity and whether that kind of impacts. So we know we're talking about soft skills, we're talking about competencies and minimum requirements from an academic perspective, but 58% of people, so the highest number we received in terms of impact on companies' recruitment, told us that their physical appearance, they believe, has that greatest impact on what they do. So definitely something to consider in a big way now, where we're recruiting in lots of different ways and using lots of virtual kind of tools, that the old biases that we tried to kind of weed out aren't going to start introducing themselves back in during the process. Especially here, that 38% of people told us that they believe that their identity, background or characteristics could actually have a negative impact on their career. If we delve deeper into that, we can see here that the kind of groups that were more likely to tell us that it has a negative impact were likely to come from the more kind of minority ethnic groups and bits. So definitely kind of lots of work here, that there's perceptions that potentially built up over a number of years, and there's more to do to kind of break down those barriers and move forwards. But it's not all bad. As part of the process as well, we did ask a number of candidates what can be done and what do they want to see from you as employers in terms of changing these perceptions and looking to kind of turn that ship around. So the first was really good and something that we've kind of been ambassadors for in the past, and that's offering buddy systems, so mentoring and giving people that kind of security and comfort, not just from whatever your training program supplies, but also kind of peer networks and understanding bits from there. The next, I guess, is that understanding of pre-existing cultures and how these cultures potentially need to make some changes for some of the new people entering the workforce. One that was highlighted here was looking at industries where maybe the social life and the drinking culture can come in, that enough is done to accommodate non-drinkers and look at kind of social events in a much kind of larger sphere than maybe we have in the past. The next, and I know from lots of people I've spoken to over time that this is a big deal actually, additional support groups. So what people can do to feel kind of positively involved in what they're doing in the workplace. So one that was kind of identified to us was for females in a traditionally male industry. However, that can apply itself to many different groups. And I guess wherever there's a hunger, it's about letting these kind of opportunities grow and develop within your businesses. The next, from kind of a social mobility perspective, is additional financial support. So it's no surprise at the moment we're currently in a recession. We're likely to kind of remain in that for a period of time to come. And are we doing everything that we can financially to help people from kind of lower socioeconomic backgrounds, and how we can help them out from the cost of even starting work, let alone the ability to kind of remain working in a particular role, understanding that people's home situations might be different to others and that can be supported. And then finally, just I guess it's really nice to see that people just want some support. So I think something that we've definitely learned from some of the issues from 2020 is there's conversations to be had in society. They're challenging, they can be awkward, but actually I think there's an opportunity now to have these conversations where maybe we haven't previously, and actually reaching out and attempting to have them is better than being concerned about repercussions and not having them at all, really. So some really good sort of areas there to look at and take on board from the people we surveyed.
So with that in mind, how can you actually be promoting your initiatives and processes? I know we spoke a little bit earlier about how maybe there was a communication problem. So here we can see that almost 70% of students and graduates think that companies should be doing more to show what actions they are taking to hire a diverse workforce. And as we can see here, one of the ways company can do this is through internal discussion forums, so initiating different conversations, with almost 70% believing that companies should do this. Students and graduates are also looking for companies to publicly publish reports on the work they are doing to ensure diversity and equity in the workplace. And this would also help to reduce misconceptions and raise awareness of company initiatives as well. So we're now going to move on to look at strategies and processes. So what do students and graduates actually want to see, and how can companies ensure they're being representative and encouraging students and graduates from all backgrounds to apply for their roles? So on the slide now, we can see that 34% of students said they would consider how committed a company is to diversity and inclusion before applying. So this is making it really clear that it is something that's very important and something companies should take note of for their hiring processes. We also looked at whether purpose-led campaigns and social movements from this year have made an impact on this, and the number did rise to 62% as a result of those purpose-led campaigns and social movements, which also just highlights the importance again. So when we look at what they want to see implemented, students and graduates believe companies should be using strategies such as blind recruitment. I'm sure many of you know what this is, but it's the process of removing all signals about a candidate's socioeconomic background, ethnicity, and immigration status that might influence a hiring manager's decision. So companies can adopt this by removing the candidate's name and some other identifying factors. So 50% also want to see employers offering living wage salaries for graduate level workers. And again, almost 50% believe that companies should be using diverse interview panels to promote their support for those from minority backgrounds. So after we found this out, we wanted to look at how effective students and graduates felt those diversity and inclusion recruitment initiatives have been for those who have experienced it. So on the slide now, you can see that students and graduates have actually listed flexible working opportunities as the most effective at encouraging them to apply for a company, with 83% saying so. And I think this could also be from this past year, where things have changed so much and a lot of companies have had to adopt flexible working opportunities to make it safer for their employees to start. So it's no surprise that this has become of increased importance to students and graduates. This is followed closely by organisations being involved in mentoring and access schemes, then followed by the application process listing no minimum requirements, and then the company offering more opportunities in disadvantaged areas as well. So, sorry, Chris.
No, that's fine. So if that's what the candidates are looking for, what do we know from the 250 HR decision makers, what's actually happening? So despite such a large proportion seeing that they're positively affected by removing minimum requirements, we know from the people we surveyed that 50% currently have no plans to actually remove these, whether that's university type or degree level or UCAS points or something like that, that there isn't. I mean, I guess we're not here to preach or to suggest anything otherwise, but I know from a couple of companies I've spoken to that took this kind of leap of faith, they've actually found it really kind of a beneficial experience to go through. And sometimes it is just making that leap and going somewhere that you've not been before. The next thing that we understand is that whilst 29% of people we surveyed did have discussions around kind of some of the social events of this year, such as Black Lives Matter, 40% of people we spoke to did not discuss this and how it actually impacts their recruitment. So I think more and more now people are much more engaged in what's happening in society. If we're looking at how it influences our kind of employer brands as well on that side, it's something that maybe we need to strive a bit further to actually introduce and implement as we go forwards. If that's what they're not doing though, what are they doing? So despite 23% of employers telling us that they currently don't have any DI&E strategies in place, of the people that do, 28% told us that they already offer flexible working. And I think as Charlotte mentioned before, this is a number that it's kind of a thing that was forced on a lot of companies this year, but it's actually made people kind of rethink and change kind of how this can impact people. And definitely from particular kind of backgrounds, having this ability definitely can help kind of promote a more diverse workforce. The next, nearly 1 in 5 have removed minimum requirements. So it'd be interesting to hear from some of you later if you have, and whether that's a benefit or whether what challenges you may be faced internally. The next is something that we know can really be a benefit potentially. So whilst we all strive for kind of authenticity, there's still people able to use kind of your pre-existing successes in terms of employing a diverse workforce. So case studies and using people as role models, as long as at the same time you're identifying that there's still greater change for you to do, and that you want to use this as kind of an ability to kind of attract more people and make it more diverse. And then we know blind recruitment is something that from a budgetary perspective or internal changes can be really challenging. But despite just 14% currently practicing this from the people we surveyed, we can see that 36% plan to implement this. So watch your space, I suppose, and see kind of what greater strides can be made from there. So I guess in kind of closing on this, we just wanted to finish by asking people that are running kind of successful kind of diversity-led campaigns at the moment, what kind of advice they would give to people that are yet to make that leap or are looking to kind of do more in that area. And the first is having that ability to identify kind of particular groups in society that maybe don't have that confidence to apply for your roles in your business. Maybe it's your sector, maybe it's your employer brands that at times has maybe not kind of worked in this. And actually approaching these individuals and supplying additional support. So I know a number of kind of large companies this year have had a lot of success running skill sessions, and actually it's what you can do outside of that attraction process to encourage people and what you can do from there. The next, as touched on before, and people still have this belief in this elitism, is to take that leap, to work, not just look at your current cohorts of students or employees and look at where they studied, but actually kind of look outside of that and be prepared to approach universities you haven't previously and see what benefits that can do. The third is greater accountability. So we know the challenges internally within your business and with your own stakeholders in demonstrating the benefits of this, because there's no immediate payoff when you start that as a strategy. So looking at scorecards, looking at your monitoring and how you're kind of keeping a track. There were some interesting conversations we had last week about people that are doing lots of really great work at the funnel, but they're losing candidates at different phases. And if you're monitoring that, you can then identify where these bottlenecks exist and what you can do to kind of adapt to them in the future. The next, again, is that leap of faith moment. So take away those minimum requirements, trusting your process that you've got, looking at the assessments that you're running and the competencies that you're looking for, rather than the traditional methods of kind of the basic academics or university attended and bits like that. And finally, as we touched on before, don't be afraid to have these conversations. So reach out, be proactive, go and offer support to individuals from these backgrounds and let them know that the door is open and there's opportunity for everyone from any background nowadays, and the benefits that gives to any workforce working forwards. So hopefully, yeah, that's some really good advice that you can kind of take on board. Be interesting to hear your thoughts.
Great. So we just wanted to close by recapping on the key findings before we move on to questions. So 34% of students and graduates said they would consider how committed a company is to diversity and inclusion before applying. 38% believe that an individual's identity, background, or personal characteristics will have a negative impact on someone's career. And students and graduates want to see companies adopting blind recruitment, offering living wage salaries, and using diverse interview panels. So I think one of the biggest takeaways from this webinar and from this research is actually the difference in student and graduate perception of what they think employers are doing and what employers are actually doing and achieving. So we have created a report from our research, which you can see the front cover on the screen now. So the report covers each topic in a lot more depth and also looks at some of the things we've not been able to cover today, such as how universities can support. The report itself can be downloaded from our Recruiter website, and we will also share the link with you soon after this webinar, but please do reach out to us if for any reason you don't receive a copy or you'd like a copy sooner, or if you want any further information in other areas. I'm sure we can have a dig through the raw data and hopefully answer any questions that you might have. So before we move on to the student panel, we wanted to take this time to answer any questions that you may have had so far. If you do have any that you haven't asked, please keep sending them through and we will try to answer as many as possible before we move on. So firstly, we've had a couple that came in just before the webinar who registered to attend. So the first one, Chris, was the research you conducted just on UK-based respondents?
Yes, it was. So it was per UK university students and UK employers that we work with. A bit more of a breakdown from there. 73% of respondents identified as being between the ages of 18 and 23. We also know there was a 58% versus 38% female male split as well.
Perfect. Got another one here. So did you ask respondents about how they feel their university has supported them with their career search? Yeah,
there's quite interesting bits, and maybe it's something for the panel actually, but from the people that we asked at first, 81% of people we asked believe that universities also have a key part, so they're kind of like the third person in that relationship, so to speak, and how they kind of fit in. And also 77% have said that where they benefited from university-led support, it really did help them through that process and what they did. So I think there's a real element from there. And I know when we presented last week, we had the University of Westminster share what they do. So if anyone's unsure, definitely reach out to people within universities. They're very keen to help out as well.
Great. We've just got a couple more I can see here.
Okay.
How do assessment centres look for employers during COVID?
Ooh, not too sure. I think a lot of people we spoke to so far, a lot of what they've had to do is replicate the attraction process actually. So the amount of people already using kind of quite bespoke ATSs and having that built for them have had that. I'm not completely sure, to be fair. So it'd be interesting to sort of hear from any employers that want to share any challenges that they've kind of had around that, or any benefits that they found from having to move any of this online actually.
Yeah, great. We've just had another one come through. Don't you think the process of blind recruitment actually undermines diversity in the workplace? Shouldn't we put importance on diverse backgrounds by empowering students to comfortably share those information with recruiters rather than asking them to not disclose by way of blind recruitment?
Yeah, no, that's a really good point actually, and it's something that came up in a conversation I was having last week. I think there's a lot of benefit in blind recruitment, especially if you've got different stakeholders in your business involved in the process, that we don't have kind of these like confirmation biases or anything like that influencing what we do. But at the same time, yeah, it's really important that we are monitoring and managing from that. I think what came up the other day, and it is a challenge, is how you can carry that information at the same time concurrently, but keep them separate. So have your diversity monitoring taking place, but keep it kind of in somehow, and there's probably more clever people than me that can work out how this can happen, but to disassociate the two, but let them run at the same time. So yeah, definitely monitor what you're doing. It feels contradictory to also say to also have a blind process, but interestingly, there's some people that have found ways around that. So it could be interesting how that works from a GDPR perspective, but also how it can benefit you as part of your recruitment process.
Yeah, just a couple more. So do you think students with limited income are disadvantaged by needing new technology to attend virtual assessment centres at the moment?
I guess the simple answer would be yes. I mean, something to ask the panel again, actually, in terms of that. I mean, I'm probably quite postgraduate now to not fully understand how it is fully at that level. So we've got 4 people that we can share the experience. So could we maybe hold that question and ask them? They definitely would have something a bit more sort of real world that they can, if it's not themselves, they may well know people that have had this as a challenge actually. That'd be interesting to see.
Yeah, of course. And this one again might be better place for the student panel, but I will ask it to you as well. We're seeing a lot of no-shows for virtual interviews and assessment centres. How can we work with students to prevent this? Do you have any tips there?
Yeah, no, that was an interesting one. I think we were discussing it earlier, weren't we? It's not something that I've heard of until today, actually. So it's definitely an interesting, I guess from my perspective, there's an argument that there's less commitment of not having to commute, not having to attend and dress up and do that. But again, I think it's definitely a question to our panel, whether they're bold enough to admit themselves, whether they've failed to attend or let that down, or actually what their perception might be of the level of commitment required to a virtual interview, and whether actually that carries a different kind of weight to them than something that's physical and requires that. And actually, what would they ask? Maybe there's something else from the employer that they might ask in terms of additional reminders or how that's kind of set out, and actually what's being followed in terms of what level of invite goes out, what time frames people are working to, and bits like that. But definitely something, probably a great time to bring them back in, actually, isn't it? And move on to that.
We have had a couple of other questions, but I think because of the time, unfortunately, we won't be able to get to those. But we can see the questions, so what we'll try to do is try to answer them, and I can see that some people have put their names, so we'll try to reach out to those individuals after the webinar with the answers to the questions. So if anybody does have any more, please feel free to keep asking, because we can get around to it. But for now, I think we should bring back our student panel. So if you could all turn your webcams on, that would be great. Perfect. Okay. Brilliant. Hi guys.
Hi. Hi everyone.
So I think we should start off by just doing a quick round of introductions, if you guys are happy with that. So Mohammed, should we start with you?
Yes, hi everyone. My name is Mohammed. I'm a final year accounting student at the University of Westminster. And at this moment in time, I am one of the person who's actually going out there, sending out tons of applications, going through the application process. So all of this is very relevant to me.
Thank you. Dora, would you like to give a little bit of an intro?
Hi, I'm Dora. I'm a second year digital media and communication student, and I'm currently a design intern.
Thank you. Noor, would you like to go next?
Hi everyone, I'm Noor. I graduated in 2018, so it's been 2 years. And since then, I've been working in industry and I attended the University of Manchester.
Thank you. And then Alessandro.
Hi everyone, thank you for having me, Charlotte and Chris. So I'm Alessandro. I'm an international and Chinese student at Westminster University on a 4-year course because I'm currently taking an work placement at Sony Europe.
Thank you. Let's dive straight into some of the questions. So first of all, it would be great if you could actually tell us a little bit about your experiences of applying for roles. So whether that's a graduate job, an internship, a work experience, or a part-time job whilst you were studying, and whether any part of the application process has stood out to you, so good or bad. Noor, shall we start with you, if you don't mind?
Yeah. So I actually started applying for internships in my first year. So on our course, it was very heavily recommended that we apply for spring weeks. And I think that was a great way for me to actually get in to learning more about what a workplace is like and getting hands-on experience. I think that was quite useful. And one of the things about the industry that I was applying in that was quite helpful was you were able to have interviews to turn the spring week into a summer internship. And then you could turn the summer internship into a grad job, which is what happened with me. And I think that was really, really useful, and that greatly helped me in my final year. And I think that's something that I haven't seen in many other places except for companies in the financial industry.
Yeah, really interesting. Thank you. Alessandro, would you like to go next and give us a bit of an overview of your experiences?
Yes. So I also started applying for jobs during my first year, as I think it's very important to have a work experience once you graduate. As I'm an international student, something that stood out to me is that some employers don't really take into consideration international requirements. For instance, I got requested A levels, but I hold an international diploma, and it wasn't really fitting for me. Something else that I will say is that psychometric tests, when psychometric tests are attached to the application, that stood out to me in a bad way, as I think that it doesn't showcase the whole potential of the candidate.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting as well. Thank you, Alessandro. Dora, do you like to go next?
I've started applying for internships this spring, but unfortunately that was the period when all the businesses were facing moving online and everything. So then I kept going and applying throughout the summer. It was a very easy application process because it was just submitting your CVs online, and all the interviews would also be online. And what I found really great was that I could apply to all over the world. Since businesses were online, they would accept international students from anywhere because you would have to work remotely.
That's great. I guess that's given you a definite advantage there, in that you can get experience in places that you maybe wouldn't have been able to, especially for internships, with having to travel and everything. So really
interesting there, Dora. Actually, maybe there's a time then, Dora, to mention. I know one of the questions we had was, so you've just sold it as a benefit in the virtual world. one of the questions we had was around the challenges for people maybe that struggle with their internet connections or having a workspace at home. Are you aware of anyone that's seen that as a negative, sort of the move to the virtual environment?
I don't personally know anyone, but with the coronavirus, there have also been very difficult situations in my country for school students attending online classes. So there have been many initiatives to try to fill this digital gap and introduce other means, or just start campaigns where they would give out laptops or iPads or any kind of technology to those who cannot afford them themselves.
Okay, cool. Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mohammed, would you like to give us a little bit about your experiences of applying for jobs as well?
Yes, so I've, like many of the others, I've been applying for sort of jobs and internships right from my first year. And if I do compare, my first instance of applying, so in my first year, which is 2 years ago, to now, I feel like the hiring process has definitely been a lot more effective. It feels a lot more structured. I know exactly what to expect now, whereas 2 years back it was a bit all over the place. So I think from that perspective, there's an order, there's a structure. That's great. But there are some challenges still there. Some employers, I feel, just aren't doing enough to look at your skills and sort of consider your background. I have been in places where I've just been rejected because I go to university which is not part of the Russell Group. So there are challenges still in regards to that, but overall I feel like the entire hiring process has been a lot more orderly now.
Oh, but that's good to see that you've seen a definite improvement over the last few years. So that's good to see. I'm going to actually pick on you now, Mohammed, because I know when we discussed this earlier, when the question came through, you actually did put your hand up and say you have missed one virtual assessment centre. If you wouldn't mind, I know that was a question that came up. If you wouldn't mind just kind of saying why, that would be great as well.
Yeah, so basically just going to admit it here. There have been instances where I have missed an assessment centre. And even now, I'm in the middle of applying for graduate jobs, and just a couple of weeks ago, I had to miss one. And the main reason was, I've got a packed week. I'm studying, I'm working, and where in one instance I'm telling a company, how great it is. There's 8 other companies, which I have to tell, how brilliant you are. So there's a lot of work to do, doing all the background research and doing all the tests and all the interviews. So one of the reasons as to why I did miss it was just because the timing issues, and it happened to come in a week where I just had so much going on, and I was just not able to sort of dedicate enough time to it.
Yeah, I think
just
that's
to that. Sorry. Oh no, I was just going to ask. Kind of, we've obviously got a number of employers here, and you've already come out and said that. Is there something that? Do you think then maybe it was a role you maybe shouldn't have applied for in the first place and was too easy because you can do it virtually now and it's easy to accept an interview without thinking about it? Or is there more that employer could have done to maybe kind of get your buying a bit more at that stage?
I think the main challenge with this particular employer was, I was given a dead sort of timeline. So I had 3 days to do the test and then 3 days to do the interviews. So I think one way of improving that is, just giving a lot more time. I'm taking into consideration the fact that, students are, first of all, studying. They also may be working as well. And also, students are applying for a lot of jobs, not just one particular company. They're applying for hundreds and hundreds of different companies. So I think employers should look at just giving more time. On average, they do give around, 5 to 7 days, which I think is sufficient. But, up to 10 days, I think that would be a great amount of time for us to sort of research and do the interviews.
Okay, cool, brilliant.
Yeah, thank you. I think you've really touched on something there about how difficult it is for, I think people forget that students are still studying, you're applying for loads and loads of jobs, and a lot of graduate schemes and application processes actually a lot from you. So there's multiple stages, and like you mentioned, it may be a good thing if employers kind of take into consideration that you potentially aren't just applying for just their job, because especially in current circumstances as well, where it's, you know, there's more competition, it's a lot harder to secure an interview. So thank you. Sorry for putting you on the spot, and thank you for explaining a little bit better. Yeah. So we just had another question coming through. So we kind of discussed in the research what students and graduates have selected as things that they think employers are prioritising when searching for a candidate. So it'd be great to get your guys' opinions on what you think employers are prioritising, and whether you agree and what you think they should be prioritising instead. So Alessandro, should we jump to you first?
Yeah, sure. I do think that employers prioritize degree classification and marks, coupled with previous work experience, but I think that they also take into consideration the application questions and the motivation that a candidate put into applying for a job. I agree and disagree. I agree that employers should focus on the reason why a candidate is applying for a specific job. And I think that if you don't have enough work experience, the only thing to shine and to bring your CV to the table is to have good marks and have a good degree classification. But I don't think that that's something that the employer should prioritize. I think they should try to understand more about the soft skills and the background of the candidate.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Thank you. Dora, shall we go to you next on what you think they prioritize and what they should be?
I think with lots of applications coming in, employers look at keywords on the application. They search for those certain qualities they posted in their job ad, which is quite understandable with the amount of applications we have coming in. But on the other hand, someone might not have the best university education experience on their CV, whereas in their free time, they might have taken part in lots of other activities that could help them get ready for that particular job. So they might not be from a particular course that the job requires, but they have other experience in the field.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like, I can only imagine how difficult it is for employers to be going through all of the different applications, but at the same time, like, if they're just looking for, if they're using automated systems just to look for a couple of keywords, could be missing a lot of potential candidates who maybe haven't used that specific keyword but have a lot to bring and would actually be an ideal candidate. So thank you. Nora, should we go to you next?
Yeah. So I think a lot of understandably employers want specific work experience. And obviously, if it's for an internship or a grad job, especially with what's going on today, I think that's not possible for everyone to have. So again, it goes back to what Dora was saying in terms of focusing on the skills that you've gained. So they don't have to be just soft skills, but it could be experience that they've gained through volunteering, through even doing a presentation on their course, for example. So I think those little things, I think they should definitely play a huge role if a candidate doesn't have the set specific technical work experience. So I think just being more open-minded and taking that into consideration would probably go a long way.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, completely agree. Goes back to what I was just saying, that, you know, students they've been studying, maybe some have done internships and things like that, but they maybe necessarily haven't got the exact work experience that that the employer is looking for. But it's just that transferable skill set can be really, really useful as well. And Mohammed, would you like to add anything there about what you think employers should be looking for?
No, I completely agree with whatever the panel has said so far, and I think where a lot of students do sort of get kicked off of the scheme is right at the start, you know, in the psychometric tests. And again, I'm happy to admit, you know, there have been times where I've just been booted off just because, you know, I haven't done so well in the psychometric test. And the issue there is, you know, companies really are just looking at, you know, whether you can do the math correctly and you know, the comprehension. But what they do miss out is the fact that, you know, there are more to a candidate than just the math and English. Characteristics such as the confidence of a person, their willingness to learn, to grow, both personally and professionally. These are some of the things which employers do miss out just, you know, by having the psychometric stage right at the beginning. So I think, for example, if they prioritize, you know, having interviews ahead of psychometric tests where they really get to know the person all round, rather than just specifically focusing on a particular ability, I think they can have a more effective workforce hired.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Mohammed. Really interesting. We have had a couple more questions come through. Let me just have a quick look. So I think this is a good one. We also covered a lot about how students and graduates are looking at how diverse a company is before they're applying for a role. So one of the questions here is, do you or would you consider how committed a company is to diversity before applying for a job role? And if so, what do you look for? Noor, if we can go to you first, if that's okay.
I think definitely for me personally, that plays a massive role in the companies I'm looking at, and just looking at the type of roles that it's going to be. I think the first port of call that I'd look at would be obviously the company website, and if they have any specific initiatives that they posted that's focusing on diversity and workforce. And I think another thing that could be quite effective is, so at the bottom of job descriptions, I know a lot of the time companies put a statement such as that we are committed to diversity and inclusivity, but I think putting specific examples would be a lot more useful, because a lot of companies just put that quite generic statement. But I think putting things such as we have, for example, a society committed to women in tech, we have a society committed to learning more about Black History Month, or something like that. I think that would be a lot more useful, and that would make me say, okay, absolutely, I want to apply for this job role, or I want to look more at this company.
Yeah, definitely. So it's just being more open and honest and showcasing exactly what they're doing, rather than just being more generic just to get a statement out there. Really interesting.
Interestingly, Noor, just as a quick question around that, at what stage would you seek that information out? Would it be at advert stage, or would it be at the stage before making an application? It's just, I know a conversation we have with lots of clients is how much copy to carry in a job advert and how much is likely to be read. And that kind of stuff, whilst being really valuable, you also need to include things like what is the job, what will you be doing, and locations and salaries and stuff like that. Kind of, so if you were to seek that information, is it on a job advert, or does it come somewhere else? Just interesting to hear your thoughts about that.
I think on the job advert, I think that would be really useful to have. I think especially in the initial phases, so it wouldn't be something that I'd want to see once I've applied. It would be definitely something pre-applying phase, just so it can set a company apart. Because obviously a lot of the grad roles, for example, especially for like a financial industry, like a lot of the firms, they offer you the same job role, but having a statement such as this is the initiatives that we have focusing on diversity at the bottom, I think I'd be more keen to apply for a company which had that versus one who didn't, because obviously the application process itself can be quite similar. It's quite long, so if I was to go for one over the other, I would go for the one with the diversity statement.
Okay, cool. No, brilliant. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Alessandro, go to you now, if that's okay.
Yep, I completely agree with Noor. In addition to researching the website and check the career hub of the company, I will also check the initiative and the project that they are working on. And I will check if the project is something that they are constantly doing every year, or if it's something that is just one-off. In addition to this, I think I will look for diversity and inclusion focused open day, such as race and ethnic minority open days, or a Pride initiative during the Pride Month. Something else is that I look at Glassdoor reviews. I know that this might not be the most reliable source of information, but I think that it's good to have employees' testimonials.
Yeah, definitely. It's good to have that that insight from employees themselves. Like you said, it might not be the most reliable, as more people are likely to write negative reviews than positive, but it does help to give a more a better overview, I suppose, as well, to see both sides of the story. It's great, thank you. Hamid, should we go to you next?
Yes, I mean, I completely agree with the panel. I do consider, looking at how committed the company is to diversity. And yeah, as Nu said, I checked the adverts, and religiously at the bottom, every company says, we are equal opportunity employers. And I sort of question myself, what does that really mean? Is it just a tick box exercise? So I do feel that companies really just need to put it out there and say, look, this is how we're different from the rest of the companies. This is how we are actively, these are the schemes we're running to actively to hire a diverse workforce. So I think that's one thing companies should consider going forward, not just, the same old, we are, equal opportunity employers.
Yeah, completely agree. That's great. Thank you. And Dora, as well, would you like to add anything there?
Well, yeah, I think how committed a company is to diversity really tells a lot about their open-mindedness and their work culture and how culturally aware they are. And yeah, I definitely agree that their website is a good starting point to show what actions they're actually taking, so it's not just words on a paper.
Completely agree. I think that's what we found in our research as well, is that a lot of people want companies to be more forthcoming with what they're doing and actually better explain it, rather than just having a statement or a sentence saying that they are. So I think that's really useful information. Thank you. It looks like we're coming to the end of our session, I'm afraid, because we do have a few more questions, but time has flown away. So I just wanted to say thank you very, very much to our student panel. If anybody does have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to us on the chat or to your account manager or on LinkedIn or anything. If you do have any questions for our student panel that they maybe haven't answered, or if you want to reach out to any of them individually, you can always reach out through us and we can pass the details on, or you can connect with them on LinkedIn as well. When we post after the event, we will be tagging them all in our LinkedIn post, so you'll be able to connect with them through that way. Chris, did you have anything to add before we finish off with the webinar?
No, conscious of time, so I guess thank you for everyone for taking your time out on a cold Tuesday morning. Thank you ever so much to the student panel. Thank you. I know it's invaluable just to hear from you guys. We can talk forever about our side of it, but you guys are living it and breathing it from there. So no, thank you ever so much. And yeah, I guess goodbye everyone. But if you've got any questions, yeah, reach out and let us know.
Okay. Thanks again. Thank you so much. And yeah, you can also download the report and we will send it to you afterwards.
Cool.